She remembered screaming, though the cockpit had been silent. No air, no sound, just the howl of terror trapped in her lungs as her ship broke apart around her. Princess Kalia of the Thalsar Imperium, descendant of warriors, now just debris. Falling through Earth's stratosphere like another forgettable meteor. She hadn't expected to survive. Her pod had pierced the forest canopy like a spear, embedding itself deep into the soil of this primitive world. Her fragile frame, shaped more for ceremonial robes than combat armor, had barely withstood the impact. Her first breath on this planet was of wet dirt and blood, the latter oozing from her forehead and staining the silver silk of her royal uniform. The stars above were different. She hated them. Kalia crawled from the wreckage, trembling, her biosuit failing, half blind from the shock. In Thalsar doctrine, royalty were never meant to touch battlefields. Yet here she was unarmed, injured, and surrounded by alien wilderness. Her last transmission had been a distorted warning that Earth was not what it appeared. But it had come too late. The Empire would descend upon this planet, assuming victory, assuming dominance. Assuming everything. She collapsed beside a tree, vision darkening. When she opened her eyes again, it was to the face of a human. His eyes were pale gray, unreadable. His face was weathered, lined by exposure and time, not age-like stone-shaped, by centuries of storms. His left eye was cybernetic, the telltale glow humming softly. A long scar traced his jawline like a ceremonial mark. His body was a lattice of muscle and machine, wrapped in armor that had seen hundreds of battles. And he was smiling. "Welcome to Earth, Princess." He didn't kill her. That confused her more than anything else. Thalsar protocol demanded swift execution of all enemy nobility. But this man, this human, dragged her broken body to a bunker carved beneath the mountain itself. He cauterized her wounds, upgraded her failing biosuit with scavenged tech, and said almost nothing for 2 days. When she could speak again, she demanded to know his name. "Marcus Kane," he said. Simply, "Retired? Retired? From what? Death?" The bunker was filled with artifacts that didn't match the galactic registry on humans. Weapons built by hand, maps etched with battle lines she'd never seen, fragments of alien technology disassembled with expert precision. Kane moved with a grace Kalia had only seen in the royal assassin's men bred for the hunt. Yet he lived. Alone, surrounded by shadows and memories. When she finally asked why he hadn't turned her in, he only said, "You crashed in my woods. Seemed rude to shoot the guest." Kalia laughed. The sound surprised them both. He began training her not out of pity, she realized, but boredom. He handed her a blade the first morning and said, "Show me what your empire taught you." What followed was a slaughter. She didn't land a single strike. Her moves were elegant, rehearsed, predictable. His were violent, dirty, effective. She fell 10 times before lunch. The 11th time she stayed down, chest heaving, muscles trembling. "Combat's not a dance, Princess," he told her. "It's math. Find the fastest way to break something and do it twice." Day by day, he unmade her. He taught her to kill instinctively, not honorably. He taught her to shoot, to sabotage, to survive in mud and cold. He took her apart and put her back together with scars and sweat and steel. Kalia had never held firearm before Earth. Now she could disassemble one in the dark, reload in a sandstorm, and shoot the wings off a mosquito at 50 meters. But it wasn't just her muscles that changed, it was her mind. The Thalsar had called humans disorganized, emotionally unstable, biologically inefficient. But in every lesson, in every bloody bruise and breathless sprint, she saw something else. Adaptation, that the humans didn't fight because they were strong. They fought because they refused to die. And they learned faster, meaner, more creatively than any species she had studied. Marcus wasn't a man, he was a war in skin. Through the flickering monitors of Kane's old systems, they watched the early stages of the Thalsar campaign begin. Ships in orbit, deploying atmospheric probes, Pulse beacon signals infecting. Earth's comes. Psychological warfare units broadcasting fear frequencies into the major cities. Won't work, Kane muttered. Not here. Kalia had seen it work. Entire species had bent beneath that same strategy. But Earth? Earth didn't kneel. Reports came in of cities not falling into chaos, but tightening into cohesion. Civilian groups forming impromptu militias. Farmers fighting scout drones with modified plows. Children uploading viruses into alien coms through outdated school tablets. Thalzer sensors flagged anomalies. Nothing made sense. Earth's network should have collapsed. Instead, they were mutating, forming encrypted pathways even their AIs couldn't crack. It was as if the chaos of Earth wasn't weakness, it was armor. Kane said nothing for a long time, only watching the blinking screens with that haunted expression. You never saw it coming. Kalia whispered to herself, her fingers gripping the combat knife Marcus had given her. She turned to him, her voice steady. They think you're fractured. Kane looked at her, a wry smile tugging at his lips. They always do. Asterisk high above Earth's atmosphere, cloaked in quantum veils and gravitic distortion fields, the Thalzer fleet assembled like a swarm of steel locusts. Battlecruisers hummed with the thrum of superheated plasma. World breakers aligned their orbital cannons. Command carriers prepared to deploy tens of thousands of cybernetic infantry. It was a ritual the Empire had perfected across 100 subjugated systems. Shock, submission, and assimilation. General Vroshek, a living monument to Thalzer conquest, observed the glowing blue orb below with a flick of his serpentine tongue. Primitive, he muttered. They build with stone and hope. In his private chamber, a holographic model of Earth flickered with targeting data. Major cities were marked with bright red runes. New York, Beijing, Delhi, Sao Paulo. The typical plan would be executed: broadcast psychic inhibitors to induce panic, disrupt global infrastructure, deploy scout drones, then deploy overwhelming force once resistance crumbled. Standardized perfection, and yet, the data didn't follow the script. On day one, the atmospheric probes encountered signal interference not from defensive systems, but from local humans. A boy in South Africa hacked a psychic drone with a homemade frequency disruptor. In rural Kansas, farmers used scrap metal and tractor engines to blind aerial scouts. In Tokyo, an AI firewall absorbed and reflected the fear broadcast back toward the Empire's own units, causing minor breakdowns in the drone command chain. Asterisk. Vroshek dismissed these as anomalies. Noise. But the noise grew louder. Over the next 48 hours, resistance cells sprouted from unexpected places. Former military veterans previously registered as inactive suddenly appeared at the helm of rapid response units. Civilian radio towers were repurposed into encrypted communication relays. Entire neighborhoods built barricades and makeshift bunkers. Even worse, when alien infantry were dropped for reconnaissance raids, they found themselves ambushed not by formal military, but by gym teachers, bikers, and retired nurses using Molotov cocktails and coordinated ambushes. What should have been a clean sweep was slowly becoming a swamp of unpredictable resistance. Why is the chaos organized? Vroshek snarled, his tail lashing behind him. These beings are not unified. Their species is fractured tribes, languages, ideologies. They were supposed to break. They are not broken, murmured his science advisor, a wiry Thalzer named Keel. They're adapting faster than the AI models accounted for. Their global networks are reconfiguring, merging memes into command structures, viral messages, into rallying cries. Their decentralized madness is evolving. Vroshek turned slowly, eyes narrowing. Madness does not evolve, it burns out. Keel hesitated, then tapped a control node. A holoscreen blinked to life, displaying live footage from Earth. A human child, no older than 10, tossed a modified scout drone into the air. It flew in a perfect arc before crashing into one of the Thalzer's own stealth gliders. A kill, a child's toy turned weapon. Keel added, "Their chaos is not a weakness, it's camouflage." Back on the planet's surface, Kellia stood. In the cold morning fog, sweat dripping down her back as she faced Marcus Kane, her body ached. Muscles she didn't know she had were on fire. The knife in her hand was real now, weight balanced, sharpened edge, blood-stained handle. Marcus didn't hold back anymore. She was no longer a guest. She was a student. She lunged, blade aiming for his shoulder. He pivoted effortlessly, trapping her arm and flipping her onto the gravel. Her body slammed the ground. She bit back a cry. "Better," Marcus said, stepping back. "Still thinking too much." "I'm not like you," she growled. "No one is. That's the point." She sat up, breathing hard. "You're not just training me to fight. I'm training you to think human," she frowned. "What does that mean?" He crouched in front of her, eyes sharp as broken glass. "It means knowing that no matter how big your enemy is, how impossible the odds, you keep moving. You cheat. You adapt. You turn your own weakness into a weapon. Humans don't fight fair. We fight to win." She looked away, shame crawling in her throat. "My people taught us to honor structure, order, hierarchy." Marcus shrugged. "And that's why they're going to lose." They sat in silence for a long moment, broken only by the wind rustling through dead pine needles. Then Marcus handed her a chip, a data shard. "Downloaded it off a downed drone last night," he said. "Command-level encryption. Took a while to crack." Kellia slotted it into her interface. Her eyes widened. "They've launched Psi-bombs into Earth's oceans targeting tectonic fault lines. They want to trigger tsunamis to wipe out coastal resistance." Marcus only nodded. "Desperate move." "Means they're already getting nervous." Kellia clenched her fists. She felt the old sickness of helplessness try to return, but she crushed it. "We stop it," Marcus grinned. "Now you're thinking human." High above, on Vroshek's flagship, alarms suddenly blared. A battleship stationed near Jupiter's orbit had just gone dark. No explosions. No debris. Just gone. Seconds later, the bridge's viewing port dimmed as static rippled through their telemetry. An image replaced the stars. It was grainy low resolution, clearly hijacked from an old Earth comms network. A human face stared into the camera, wearing a gas mask and a hood. Then it spoke. "You came to conquer. Good." The signal glitched, then cleared, showing footage of a hidden space station behind Europa, once thought abandoned, now bristling with weapons. "We needed a reason to show you what we've built in the dark." The message ended with 2 words in red across every Thalzer screen. "Come closer." Vroshek stood frozen. Not because of the threat, but because the humans were inviting them. It was no longer an invasion. It was a hunt. And the Thalzar had just stepped into the trap. Asterisk in deep space. Silence should have reigned, but aboard the Thalzer fleet, chaos took its place. Encrypted war chatter overlapped across channels. Sensor data conflicted. A third scout ship had gone dark over Europa. No explosion, no wreckage, no distress call, just a dead signal, like it had blinked out of existence. General Vroshek paced, claws clicking on the obsidian floor as tactical. Maps flickered in and out of focus. "We've underestimated them," hissed Admiral Zurek, his voice thick with static. "The humans, they were waiting for us." "No," Vroshek growled. "They couldn't have known. They don't have the tech. They shouldn't have the tech," Zurek cut in. "And yet, something cloaked just obliterated a ship with quantum shielding." Vroshek clenched a fist. A small, flickering hologram reappeared on the bridge, pulled from the debris of a recovered drone. Static, low-res, but unmistakable. A face, human. Pale mask, cracked visor, speaking without emotion. "You thought we were blind," the voice echoed. But it was your light that made you easy to see. Then the image cut. The bridge fell silent. Back on Earth, Marcus Kane and Kellia stood atop an old steel watchtower overlooking a burned-out valley. The trees below were blackened, the soil still steaming from a recent Thalzer drop pod incursion. Kellia had led the ambush herself, with just 5 human fighters and repurposed Thalzer plasma rifles. They'd turned a scouting party of 30 alien soldiers into a smoking crater. Marcus lit a cigarette and looked out over the valley, silent. The smoke curled around his face like ghost hands. "You're not royalty anymore," he said. "Not to them. They've marked you as a traitor." Kellia didn't flinch. "Then let them remember me as the first of many." Her armor was no longer ceremonial. It was patched, bullet-scarred, and smeared with alien blood. She wore the emblem of no house or empire, just a crude skull burned into the chest plate. A human symbol she'd learned from Marcus, death before defeat. But it wasn't just the armor. Her eyes were different, sharper, colder. Marcus handed her a data drive. "What is it?" she asked. "Proof," he replied. "Downloaded from one of their orbital relay stations. Took 3 weeks of dead satellites and stolen codes. It's everything the galaxy doesn't know about Earth." She slotted the drive into her visor. Files opened, one after another. Ancient documents, declassified war records, black site experiments, ghost projects. There were dates stretching back centuries. Wars fought not between countries, but between humanity and things not from Earth. Interstellar incursions, extraterrestrial viruses, small skirmishes erased from public memory. Names like Project Parallax, Operation Nightglass, and something simply called Protocol Eden. Kellia stared in horror as she realized what it meant. They fought aliens before, Marcus nodded. Not many survived to tell the tale, but these aren't recorded in the galactic archives. We never knew. That's because Earth never sent survivors back, Marcus said flatly. Every race that came here left in pieces, if they left at all. Kellia turned away from the screen. "You were never prey." "No," Marcus said quietly. "We were the trap." In orbit, Thalzer Command received a devastating new report. An AI-guided assault on the eastern seaboard had failed not because of resistance, but because the humans had hacked into their own neural networks and inverted the control signals. The machines turned on each other, even more alarming. One of the hacked units began transmitting back to the Thalzer fleet, disguised as a command. Ship leaking real-time fleet telemetry. The implications were staggering. "They've reverse-engineered our communications," shrieked Keel. "They've weaponized their ignorance," Vroshek muttered. "Turned their backwardness into unpredictability." And still, they clung to belief. Earth could not stand against a true offensive. But then came the twist they never expected. In the orbital debris field above Earth, where destroyed probes and satellites drifted in silence, something moved slow, deliberate, patient. An object long thought destroyed. The ISS Vindicator. A myth among deep-state military groups. A relic of the Cold War, retooled, hidden, and enhanced beyond any known tech level. It had been offline for decades until now. Thalzer deep space sensors detected it just as it opened fire. Its weapon? Not plasma. Not lasers. It used physics. Kinetic rods, 6-meter tungsten lances accelerated via electromagnetic rails launched at near relativistic speed. One pierced the Thalzer dreadnought Ravelthun from bow to stern. The ship didn't explode, it folded in on itself, ruptured by the sheer force of impact. And then came the transmission, unencrypted, broadcast in every known galactic frequency. A woman's voice, calm, cold, calculated. "This is Earth, you invaded. We responded, you escalated, we adapted." Vroshek staggered back from the display. "This can't be happening," he whispered. This isn't how humans are supposed to fight, and yet, it was happening. Faster than any species they'd ever encountered. Earth had gone from isolated to interconnected, from divided to unified, not by peace, but by war. In every dark corner of the planet, something stirred. Old weapons activated, ancient bases powered up. Civilians turned into soldiers, students into codebreakers, hunters into guerrillas, and at the heart of it all, Kelia, once a trembling princess, now stood like a blade drawn from fire. The Empire has made a mistake, she said quietly, staring up at the stars. Marcus smirked, watching the sky light up with another falling alien wreck. No, he said. They made two. And the galaxy would never forget either. Asterisk the Thalzer. Empire had never encountered a species it could not break. Until Earth. Vrashek watched the battle logs in mounting silence. The scrolling feed of reports, each a fresh humiliation, grew faster than his eyes could follow. Drones vanishing into unmapped cave systems. AI clusters falling silent after encountering counter-logic virus anomalies. Entire squadrons lured into ghost cities rigged with explosive traps crafted from plumbing supplies and microwave emitters. Human ingenuity is becoming a statistical anomaly, hissed Keel, his voice trembling as he scanned the analytics. They're not adapting linearly. Their learning curve is vertical. We have superior numbers, Vrashek snapped. They're not fighting us with numbers, Keel replied. They're fighting us with improvisation. It was true. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and outteched. Yet everywhere the Thalzer struck, humans were already waiting, sometimes with weapons, sometimes with nothing more than sharpened rebar and sheer, unrelenting audacity. They didn't just react, they lured. They turned battlefields into puzzles, war zones into traps. Earth's terrain itself, its forests, cities, tunnels became an extension of their will. A shattered overpass in Los Angeles became a gravity slingshot for anti-air shells. An old subway system in Paris was transformed into a mobile command center. And in the Pacific, a seemingly abandoned oil platform opened its floodgates to reveal a hidden launch site for an underwater drone fleet. The drones didn't attack, they hijacked the Thalzer signal bandwidth, flooding their communications with ear-splitting human music, opera, death metal, jazz, and most horrifyingly, Rick Astley. It wasn't just war. It was psychological warfare at its most raw and intimate. Kelia watched it all unfold from Marcus Kane's command. Node deep beneath Mount Rainier, once a dormant volcano, now a camouflaged human military hub. Decades in the making, she had changed. Her eyes no longer held fear or doubt. She walked with the poise of someone who had tasted her own blood and liked it. A blade hung from her back, earth-forged from broken Thalzer armor. Her Thalzer accent had nearly vanished. She was no longer a guest. She was one of them. This isn't random, she said, reviewing a live feed of ambushes and sabotages across the globe. They've been preparing for this. Marcus looked up from a battlefield monitor, bruised, armored, and chewing on the stub of a protein bar. You thought we didn't know we weren't alone? He said, we've been poked at by shadows for centuries. Abductions, skirmishes, probes. Hell, we've been building under every mountain and inside every ocean. Trenched since the Cold War. You're not the first to come knocking. Kelia narrowed her eyes. Why didn't you tell the galaxy? Because Earth doesn't advertise. We wait, then we make sure you never leave. She turned to another feed, this time from orbit. The Vindicator's kinetic strikes had shattered 3 more capital ships. But now new signals pulsed across the skies. The Thalzer had begun deploying Worldshaper's massive terraforming weapons, designed to corrupt planetary atmospheres and disrupt magnetospheres. The sky began to change. Earth's auroras flickered, weather patterns convulsed. And still, Earth responded. Every ship that entered orbit found itself hunted not by warships, but by anomalies, unmarked satellites, scavenged alien hybrids, Even suicide drones guided by AI protocols written by rogue hackers. Vrashek clenched his claws. No more. We crush them, now. With a single command, the Oblivion Lance descended from high orbit, an ancient Thalzer weapon that had turned entire planets to lifeless ash. Its power core glowed like a miniature star, aimed at the heart of Earth's resistance. But Earth was not without its own monsters. From the Mariana Trench, something rose. It was not a warship in the traditional sense. It had no sleek lines, no polished hull. It looked like a jagged cathedral of metal and rust, stitched together from fallen satellites, scrapped nuclear submarines, and forgotten Cold War relics. A floating Frankenstein, they called it Leviathan. Kellia watched the feat in silent awe as the Leviathan launched into the stratosphere, its armor absorbing a direct blast from the Oblivion Lance and surviving. Barely. It returned fire with primitive coil guns, launching payloads of depleted uranium wrapped in electromagnetic flux fields. The first shot didn't destroy the Lance, but the second? The second made history. The Oblivion Lance exploded in orbit, taking 2 of its escorts with it. The shockwave lit up the night sky. And across every human communication network, a phrase appeared. This is our planet. You die on our terms. On the ground, in the jungles of Brazil, a Thalzer colonel and his troops pursued what they believed was a weakened resistance group. They entered an abandoned village. Their sensors detected no threats. And then everything exploded, not from bombs, but from sound. Human engineers had laid sonic traps, frequency synchronized to Thalzer neural implants. The entire platoon fell, spasming in agony as civilians emerged from the tree's grandmothers. Teenagers, soldiers disguised as farmers, each holding improvised weapons. Kellia turned to Marcus. They're adapting to your adaptations. Are you not concerned? He leaned back, grin sharp and tired. We haven't really started yet. As he spoke, deep beneath the base, dormant systems came online. Vaults long sealed hissed open. What emerged wasn't human. Not anymore. Genetically enhanced operators from Project Revenant. Ghost soldiers, built for the final war. The Thalzer had awakened something they didn't understand. Kellia felt her blood pulse faster. She was no longer just an heir to an empire. She was a soldier of Earth now. Reborn in fire, molded by survival, sharpened by Marcus's brutal training. She would not be a bystander to another imperial conquest. Outside, the stars shifted again more, Thalzer reinforcements warping in. Good. Let them come. The humans were ready. The Thalzer Empire believed it had seen the worst humanity could offer. They believed they had reached the threshold of Earth's capacity to resist, to improvise, to retaliate. But that was only because they hadn't yet witnessed humanity, when it decided to become something more than human. Until now. In the deep, frozen wastes of Siberia, where satellites failed and radio signals went to die, something ancient stirred. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. No warhead, no armor. Just a bunker carved into permafrost during the last global war. Sealed by men who knew the future would be worse than the past. They called it the Black Seed, a contingency protocol activated not by command, but by a threshold. That threshold had now been crossed. Within hours, the Thalzer fleet detected seismic anomalies in several locations across the northern hemisphere. Subterranean heat blooms, pulses of radiation that made no scientific sense. Then came the silence. Not the tactical kind, the horrifying kind. The kind that fell when thousands of drones, scanners, and orbital surveillance feeds just stopped. Then came the return feed, grainy video of a humanoid figure walking calmly through the center of a firestorm. Skin glowing with embedded circuitry, eyes pale white with data-light. Dragging behind them a Thalzer field commander still breathing. But barely. The figure looked at the camera. Project Wraith is online, it said. Across the galaxy, species that had once mocked Earth now trembled. The Thalzer had awoken something beyond war machines. They had awoken humans weaponized by extinction. Wraith was one of many. In a secret facility beneath the Nevada desert, Kellia stood inside a command chamber built before she was born, watching the activation of systems even Marcus Kane hadn't known existed. Screens displayed Earth's climate shifting as orbital weather controls engaged. Automated drones launched from mountain vaults. Cryo chambers hissed open to reveal soldiers enhanced with quantum-fused muscle fibers and dream-coded neural reflexes. Marcus leaned against the wall, arms crossed, face unreadable. "You kept this hidden," Kellia said, her voice low. "Even from yourselves." "We don't tell the world what monsters we bury," he replied, "until the world needs them." Outside, the second wave of Thalzer ships entered orbit. This wasn't a fleet. This was a punishment. Titans bristling with mass compression cannons. Moonships capable of altering gravity wells. Planet walkers, enormous biomechanical beings bred from the genetic remains of conquered worlds. The Empire wasn't coming to conquer Earth anymore. It was coming to eradicate it, but Earth didn't panic. Earth smiled. In Berlin, a global broadcast was transmitted across every known frequency, human and alien alike. The speaker wasn't a politician. It wasn't a general. It was a girl no older than 16, her face smudged with oil, wearing a patched mechanic suit, standing inside a repurposed warehouse filled with cables and jury-rigged transmitters. She looked straight into the camera, eyes fierce. "To those watching, to those listening, to those still hiding, they think we're losing. They think they can scare us into surrender." She picked up a plasma rifle made from a scavenged starfighter core and a 3D printed frame. "Let them keep thinking that." Then she nodded. Behind her, lights flared across the world, signals from resistance cells, underground networks, and rogue satellites. It wasn't organized, and it didn't need to be. It was human. Messy, furious, relentless. The Thalzer flagship, Vraten Ascendant, watched in growing confusion as its gravimetric sensors began to fail. Probes dropped into Earth's oceans vanished. Moonside surveillance drones sent back corrupted images, earthquakes beneath the surface, strange formations, impossible magnetic structures. They had no idea Earth had been preparing for centuries. Undersea cities hidden beneath tectonic plates. Self-replicating factories powered by geothermal vents. An orbital ring unfinished, fragmented, but now suddenly online, activating a swarm of thousands of micro-platforms, each armed, each unmanned. Then the unthinkable happened. Earth went on the offensive. The Leviathan, Earth's monstrous hybrid warship, didn't defend orbit. It pierced it, plunging into space using magnetic-gravitic slingshot launches. In its wake followed hundreds of aerospace bombers and atmospheric Breachcraft, primitive by galactic standards, but brutally effective in execution. They swarmed the Thalzer line. They didn't even use shielding. They simply didn't miss. Kellia watched all of it unfold from the command hub. Jaw tight, heart pounding, the human war machine had shifted gears. It was no longer fighting to survive. It was fighting to win. Thalzer troops began abandoning their stations. Some commanders requested surrender protocols, only to discover none had ever been designed, because the Empire had never lost. Now they didn't know how to end the war. Even Vroshek, for all his pride, began to question the mission. And then the final twist came. A transmission intercepted from a secure Thalzer frequency. It wasn't broadcast. It wasn't intercepted by chance. It was delivered by Earth. It showed a chamber, dimly lit, surrounded by monitors. At its center, a single pod. Inside it, pulsing with alien tech and biointerfaces, floated a creature not of Earth. Kellia stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "That's not Thalzer." Marcus nodded. "That's what came before them." They had dug deep beneath their own empire and found something. Something Earth had recovered. Something the Thalzer themselves had built their empire to escape. It called itself the Null Warden, Marcus said. It destroyed a star cluster before going dormant. Your people buried it and forgot. Kellia's throat tightened. But we found it. No, Marcus said. We hunted it. And now we're giving it back. The Thalzer fleet received one final message from Earth, the image of the Null Warden's pod opening. We don't fear extinction, the voice said. We adapt to it. You tried to break us. Now meet the thing that made us strong. It wasn't just a war anymore, that it was a reckoning, and Earth was its executioner. Asterisk. The skies above Earth ignited like a second dawn. Where once only stars and distant satellites twinkled in the void, now there was war raw, cataclysmic, and operatic in scale. The Thalzer Armada, dark and elegant, had taken formation across Earth's orbital shell, layering ship behind ship like a fortress of glass and steel. They called it the Final Line, a blockade meant to end resistance with coordinated saturation strikes and gravitational compression warheads. But Earth didn't care for elegance. From the planet's surface erupted a volley of crude but devastating retaliation, kinetic spears, railgun shots accelerated by repurposed maglev coils, and electromagnetic blasts that shattered enemy sensors. Crippled Thalzer destroyers began plummeting from orbit in arcs of fire. In the heart of it all, the Leviathan ascended through the chaos like an angry god, trailing clouds of smoke and ionized blood. Its hull rippled with adaptive plating, absorbing plasma, shattering hulls by sheer mass alone. Unlike the smooth Thalzer designs, the Leviathan looked alive like a predator birthed from the Earth itself. Inside, Kellia paced the command deck, flanked by human tacticians and AI relays humming with chaotic data. Her armor was black now, scarred by shrapnel and stained with alien gore. In her hand was the relic blade she had reforged with Marcus Kane's help, half ceremonial, half battlefield terror. Enemy cruisers regrouping over the Indian Ocean. One of the techs shouted. They're trying to encircle our upper atmosphere strike units. Kellia tapped her earpiece. Deploy intercept drones and bring the orbital catapults online. Force them higher. Make them choke on their own density field. Understood, Commander. Commander, she had never dreamed that word would apply to her. Once a trembling princess, now she led fleets of a world not her own, because she had become of it. Not human by birth, but forged by them, tempered by their struggle, sharpened by their defiance. She turned to Marcus Kane, seated in an augmented tactical pod behind her. His left arm was gone, ripped off in a boarding skirmish 3 days prior, now replaced with a raw mechanical interface. Blood still soaked through the bandages under his suit, but his expression was calm, even amused. Are we winning? She asked. Marcus exhaled smoke from a cracked respirator. We're not dead yet, that's how you tell. On the bridge of the Thalzer command ship, Vratin Ascendant, General Vrashek raged. The Empire's finest weapons had failed. Planet walkers once, feared across the galaxies, now lay shattered across Pacific islands. Their gravitational weapons had been neutralized by Earth's unpredictable magnetic field shifts. Even worse, human AI networks had begun infecting Thalzer systems, mimicking their commands, rerouting their fire, and in some cases, turning ships against each other. It was unthinkable. These creatures are savages. Vrashek roared. They should be begging for mercy, not laughing as they tear us apart. They've stopped reacting, whispered Keel, barely able to process the sensor feeds. They're dictating the terms. Vrashek spun toward the monitor. There, in high orbit, hundreds of pinpricks of light blinked into existence. They weren't ships. They weren't stations. They were humans. Each wearing stripped-down combat exosuits, propelled by magnetic boots and tethered with fusion charges. Boarding pods launched in swarms, flooding toward the Thalzer line like angry wasps, and among them flew Kellia. She rode her pod like a comet, slamming directly into the hull of the Thalzer battlecruiser. The pod cracked open, and she emerged. In a flurry of motion spinning, slicing, carving through elite guards like paper. Her blade hummed with borrowed tech, cutting through armor with terrifying ease. She didn't just kill. She BROADCASTED. Every slice, every thrust, every counterstrike was streamed live to the Thalzer fleet, each soldier forced to watch as one of their own. A royal, destroyed their best without mercy. It shattered morale. It ignited fear. And then came the last straw. From the Mariana Vault, Project Wraith launched in full. A dozen of them, pale-skinned, eyeless human weapons of war, enhanced with pre-human technology and viral cognition. They didn't speak. They didn't coordinate. They moved like instinct-made flesh, slipping through Thalzer shields, bypassing every defense. One wraith slipped into the Vrotten Ascendant itself, killing 20 guards before leaving behind a small device. A beacon. When it activated, it didn't detonate. It didn't scream. It simply sent a pulse. And from deep within Earth, the Null Warden answered. In the cold void between Earth and the Moon, space shivered. The Warden's pod emerged in a burst of red light, ancient and alive, pulsing with impossible energy. A being of thought and machine, neither human nor alien. It saw the Thalzer and remembered them. It moved with grace, with wrath, with purpose. It needed no fleet. It was the reason Earth had learned to be dangerous. The Warden's first strike wasn't fire, but silence, cutting all communication between Thalzer ships with a mental wave. The second turned their shields into lightning cages, trapping their own crews inside. The third was extinction. It unraveled a Thalzer flagship molecule by molecule, folding its structure into pure entropy, as if punishing it for existing. Kellia watched from her vantage on the hull of a falling cruiser, panting, bloodied, victorious. "It's over," she whispered. "No," came Marcus's voice over her comms, faint but smiling. "It's just beginning." The sky above Earth cleared. The wreckage of 1,000 alien ships glowed like new stars. And Earth was still standing. Bruised, burning, but unbroken. Because that's what humans did. They survived. Then they taught you why that was a mistake. The war was over, but the stars still burned. Thalzer wreckage drifted like haunted memories across Earth's orbit, their gleaming hulls now twisted metal, pierced through by crude human weapons and precision strikes from an enemy they never truly understood. Fires still flickered in Earth's upper atmosphere, where battle had raged with a fury not seen in 100,000 years. Yet, Earth endured, from the snowy ruins of Moscow to the reclaimed towers of New York. Humanity emerged not as victims, not even as victors, but as survivors who had earned their place in the galactic ledger with blood, fire, and relentless defiance. Kellia stood atop a cliffside outpost on the coast of northern Scotland, the wind cold against her exposed cheek. Her armor was battered, her blade chipped, and her right shoulder wrapped in a synthetic nerve cloth where alien plasma had nearly torn it from her body. And yet she stood straight, regal, reborn, not in the image of her empire, but in the shape of a warrior Earth had forged. Below her, what remained of the human fleet was docked for repair. The Leviathan lay in dry dock along the coastline, surrounded by scaffolding and engineers. Makeshift medical tents dotted the rocky landscape where wounded soldiers, both human and hybrid, lay side by side. Marcus Kane approached from behind, his synthetic arm twitching slightly from overstimulation. His face bore new scars, and his voice was quieter than before, more introspective. He stopped beside her, exhaling mist into the morning air. "So," he said after a long pause, "that's it." Kellia didn't answer right away. She looked up at the morning sky, still stained with faint streaks of burning debris from fallen Thalzer warships. "No," she finally said. "It's not." Marcus glanced at her. "You think they'll come back?" "They won't have to." Her eyes were hard. "The rest of the galaxy will come to find out what happened here." He nodded slowly. "And when they do?" They'll see what happens when you corner a species that refuses to die. For all its rage, all its fury, Earth had not responded with vengeance. It had responded with truth. With a message the galaxy could no longer ignore. Humanity was not to be pitied or avoided. They were to be feared. Broadcasts had already begun, alien black. Markets buzzing with hacked footage of the battle. Of Kellia carving through Thal Zur. Elites of the Null Warden descending like divine judgment. Traitors whispered of Earth's secret projects. Scholars debated how a fractured species had survived the undivided wrath of an empire. Priests in distant systems lit candles in reverence to a species they now called the children of ash and iron. And still Earth remained quiet. It didn't celebrate. It didn't boast. It watched. Because now it knew something terrifyingly true. It had won not because it was strong, but because it was dangerous. Back in the subterranean command vaults, the Global Council reconvened. Not a council of nations, but of cells, military leaders, scientific minds, former hackers, resistance fighters, and the newly inducted hybrids from other species who had turned on the Thal Zur mid-invasion. They met in silence, not debating what Earth should do next, but asking a more important question. What would the galaxy do about them? Kellia was among them, not as an observer, but as a leader. A symbol, the once fragile princess who had become Earth's sword. We can't go back to what we were, she told them. Not humans, not me, not even the galaxy. We crossed a line and became something else. One of the Wraith operators, face obscured by a biometric shroud, spoke for the first time. We were always this, it said. You just brought it into the light. Kellia turned to Marcus afterward, in private. You were training me from the beginning. Not just to fight, but to carry something. Legacy, he answered. One built not on dominion, but defiance. What now? She asked. What does Earth become? Marcus thought for a long moment, then said, not an empire. Never. That, but maybe ... a warning. They stood in silence together, watching the ocean crash against the steel hull of the Leviathan below. The sunlight breaking through smoke-stained clouds. Across the galaxy, the Thal Zur survivors scattered. Shattered and humiliated. Their empires began to crack from within as word of Earth's resistance spread, myths growing faster than facts. Fear outpacing reason. Species who once bowed to Thal Zur doctrine now looked to Earth for answers. Some even sent envoys. Earth responded with caution and power. It didn't strike. It didn't threaten. It simply sent the message that had ended the war. Burned into a single piece of shattered Thal Zur hull and delivered to every known channel. We were weak. You made us strong. Now imagine what happens when we choose to be. Kellia placed her helmet under one arm, wind tugging at her white blonde hair, her eyes reflecting the fire of a changed world. She wasn't just the warrior Earth had made. She was its voice, its blade, its proof. And as humanity rebuilt not just cities, but alliances, dreams, futures, the galaxy held its breath. Because Earth was no longer just a backwater world. It was legend. And legends never die.